most have three, some have two, but it looks like there may have been a third. And there's one situation, I don't know how they do that, they cut the top, but the bottom marble step is gone, but I was a little surprised about that. What is this called, is this art here, these here, what's the name, what are these, does it have these particular names? There's a rhythm throughout this block, and look at some others, really kind of attractive. Could you see it, go down the block a little bit again, or come back? Yeah, okay. I mean, does this have a name, that, or is it just, is it particular, the style or something? It's not all of Druid Avenue.
Right, I mean, they're arches, when it uses the stonework to do it, they're called, to hold up an arched window, it's called a lintel.
This is stonework here that does that, right? And that's stone there, couldn't see much, but we got marble steps, and this is stone work along here?
Yep, that's all stone. It's a
Okay.
stone water table.
Okay, is that what that's called?
It's called a water table, yep.
A water table.
And that's not falling significantly, it's in relatively decent shape.
I mean, some of them have been painted, but yeah,
Yeah, but most have.
Yeah,
This
but yeah,
house
they're in-
here,
yeah, they're in good
this-
shape.
The bricks here, could you go down towards the lower end of the block?
Yep. Let's walk down.
Right, okay, stop it. I think there are two formstone houses in the block. There's Wynn, and I think there too. And as far as it appears that formstone looks to be in really good shape, am I correct?
Well, I mean, the 2210 does not, it has this bulge,
Yeah,
and the
you
fact
have to
is
see
that
it.
addressing that would mean that the formstone would have to be removed to address that.
Okay, and then you have this again, here,
Yep.
and here, I thought this was an odd sort of window there. But I found that all kind of, impressive. Has any thought been given to something, a treatment where we retain the facades, we retain the front, and somehow work that into the plan of the park, so the yards and most of it, has anybody ever thought or considered that as an option? Because this is, I mean, we've done that often in other situations. I mean, this is a part of, kind of interesting part of Baldwin.
Yeah, I don't know if that's been considered. Okay, then I think that
I'd
the
like to
community
hear
could
any
address
thoughts.
that.
Any thoughts of what consideration, because I just find this series here quite impressive. I mean, if you wanted to sort of paint a picture of what row house, a kind of attractive row house, just facades, and again, the backs are all looking pretty bad shape. I couldn't determine what, if anything, is going on up here, but it was this, the windows, this. So I'd like to know here, any thoughts that have been given to,
Sir, we'll get to you one second. We definitely want to hear the public. We're trying to get a couple of big questions, then we'd love to hear from folks here.
Okay.
okay, now, the specific house that was, tell us more about the specific house that Cab Calloway was in for a while. What's the condition of it all the way through? Which one is that again?
It's 2216, it's right here in the middle.
Okay,
We
that's
did
the
not.
one with the bulge?
No, this one, it has a red X, or sorry, it is marked with an X, which means that it's structurally unsound and that, emergency personnel are warned.
So we don't, I mean.
So we did not go into the building. We did an exterior only visual survey.
So
But
is
the
there
roof
some
is
report?
semi-intact.
The roof appears to be semi-intact, but there is evidence on the interior of
But
deterioration.
we don't have did somebody else do just an assessment, a thorough assessment? I mean, I'm saying you didn't go in and do it, but.
No,
Is there a report or anything around?
we only have the records from DHCD and regarding, I don't know when it was, and the fact that it has that red X on it.
Okay.
But we do not
Photograph
know when
from
that
the back.
was completed, but it,
Someone made the positive determination that it is structurally unsound.
Yes.
I presume.
I just wanna say that also my understanding is that DHCD did not
Okay.
make that determination for the red X's, that the
Okay.
fire department put
Okay.
those on,
Okay,
where
sorry,
they
fire
determined
department.
things were structurally unsound, it wasn't DHCD.
Thank you for that clarification, Kate.
Okay. Could you go around to show the photograph of the back,
Yeah. Maybe.
but is there so much overgrowth you can't see?
There is a lot of overgrowth.
Is that it right there?
This is it right here. There's a doorway or a very tall window there. It is open. There's it's a walk-in basement.
So
There are
it's really-
boards across it. These windows on the second floor are also open, and the roof, the ceiling condition is similar to what I could capture in the front. It was hard to capture because it was a bright day and dark inside.
Now, on the
But there
picture on
does
the left,
appear to be a bit
picture on
of
the
a
left is the front,
structural
right?
lean.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the front and this
And
is
that's
the
just,
rear.
the change in color is just paint peeling off, am I correct?
Yes, that
That's
is,
what
that
this
is paint,
peeling
yep,
off.
that's paint peeling off. And all of the rears of these buildings, it's a 3-story front block and then a 2-story, what we call a rear L, so, so this is the rear L here.
Do you have any sense of how much square footage, enclosed square footage these?
That's a great question.
are?
I
I'm
know,
looking on
yeah.
SDAT, and it doesn't seem to have that information, it
Um,
just gives you the lot area.
yeah, I would have checked SDAT for that as well, so if it's not on SDAT, I can't take a guess. I mean, if I could take a guess, I'd say over,
I mean, they
I
don't
mean,
cover
over
the-
2,500,
They don't
I
cover the
would
whole
guess.
lot.
Have there ever been has there any been a period of time, maybe the city hasn't owned this enough, where the city has sort of asked for proposals for developers about this block, or is it just so recently
Yeah,
acquired,
no.
I mean, have there been?
Well, I mean, originally, Druid Heights CDC was going to work on this side of the block, and they were going to redevelop these houses. They have enough funding to do one side, I don't think they have enough funding to do both sides.
Mhm.
And the planning department at the time worked with the community where they came up with a plan for this park, and it was decided that it made more sense to have houses facing the park. And so that's why they decided to work on the other side, Druid Heights CDC, to renovate the houses on the other side of the block so that those houses would be facing the new park that was being created.
So there, they stole my question, okay, I understand that's
Yeah,
their
so this side of the
decision.
block right
Has
there.
there anyone ever said, hey, we've got this group, other than that, buildings here, give us your best idea? Does
Well,
anybody propose?
I don't know if that started with, and maybe, Druid Heights could help us with that, but I don't know, cause I wasn't at housing at that time, so I don't know if that started with, I don't think it was an RFP process. But I'm not sure how that.
Right, just to give you more information, HCD is not prepared to demolish these buildings at least for another 6 months. They have a lot more work to do. They have to get their paperwork in order. So there's at least 6 months before anything will happen with these properties.
So what would be the process? I may not even be using the right terms by which the city would say to the world,
We would put out an RFP.
this is a group of block here, give us your ideas. If you know, what would you do with this?
We would normally put out our request for proposals,
Okay.
and we would have a process where we would solicit proposals, and then we would have a review panel to review those proposals. That's the normal process
And the
for a
city
full
has the
block.
whole, yeah, I'm talking about the full
Right.
block. I mean, the one building in the middle of the block there.
Right, well, the good news is, from that perspective, the city has acquired the entire block, so there's not a mixture of city and private ownership, so the city could in theory do that.
Is there any reason, I mean, we have time, the city could do it, I mean, how much time do it only give developers or interest people or someone?
Well, normally the RFP process, putting it out and reviewing it, everything could take about 6 months. But then to actually get a development to happen, that could be another year or two before, if you get a qualified developer ready to put in a proposal, takes them a while to get their financing in order and to start construction.
Okay, now the other alternative, in 6 months tearing that park business, is that all on track, all ready to go and all funded, or is that also something?
I don't think it's fully funded yet, but I think the people here from the Green Network and DHC, Druid Heights CDC can talk more about that.
So one thing I'd like to do is, recognize, trying to stay still on time here. A lot of folks came out here today to talk on this issue. I'd like to get them to be able to come up here and sort of chat with the commission as well too. So, do we have other pressing technical questions for Warren or Eric? And if not right now, let's talk more broadly about, I think we've fairly successfully highlighted the fact that the buildings are in rough shape. And that will definitely impact any potential cost for rehabilitation, but I think we've also established that they're not so far gone that this is a pointless conversation.
You've seen worse.
We have seen worse.
But I'd also just like to say, time is of the essence. These facilities are deteriorating as we speak.
So with that, a number of people,
What is that? Material, I mean,
If
is
they're-
there something that makes them more of an essence than
Some of them don't have roofs, and every time it rains, nature doesn't stop for us. Time's gonna keep on
There's a lot
knocking
more
on.
rain.
the decision will be taken out of our hands sooner or later when they collapse up their own accord, and they're kind of getting
Right,
close.
tubes already have partial collapse in the front side.
So with that, maybe for a bit of context, I'd like to invite Peter Brooks up first, to chat a little bit. Not to steal Peter's thunder, but he is Cat Calloway's grandson, and he's done a great deal of effort starting to kind of bring this, situation to life.
Thank you, Commissioner, and all the commissioners, and recognize the dignitaries in the room. I only found out about this about a month and a half ago, and I wasn't prepared to present here today, but I'm happy to answer questions. It's just my feeling and the feeling of the family that if given an opportunity like this, we could raise the interest of developers such to the point that they probably could submit RFPs within the 6-month window. We've entertained a number of calls from people who have verbally expressed commitments, but we don't have anything in writing or concrete yet partly because it doesn't have historical recognition by the local community.
Are
But
you speaking about the single building or the block?
um,
You say you've had people, are you just referring to the one building?
no,
Or you're talking about the group?
people are talking about the block.
And sort of be clear, just because it's an important distinction, that block has historic designation on it currently through the National Register, so.
Okay.
What that means is that if someone were to come in tomorrow and coordinate with DHCD and acquire the properties, they could take advantage of the historic tax credit that is included with that. The difference between the National Register designation and the local historic designation is that unless you're using federal funds, there are really no constraints on, adverse impacts to the property. So you can tear it down unless you're using federal funds. If it becomes a locally designated historic district, any sort of bad things that might happen have to come through the commission here. So it's an extra check on the development process. So that's a really important distinction, because one of the reasons you're seeing the issue prior with Woodbury was it had National Register designation, not local designation. Folks came in and after conveying all sorts of good intentions, demolished pre-Civil War stone buildings. That would not have happened had it been subject to a chapter review, but it still has those same federal historic tax credits. So the money from that perspective is available now.
Mhm.
The additional protections that we offer are not.
And I think the house has an incredible story to tell of the family. It's a very different narrative from Wilson Park. In his autobiography, he writes that this was where he learned to value money. And as you know, Cab Calloway's career spans 70 years, which is kind of rare for a singer. In terms of his significance, as you know, he's considered the king of swing, the king of Heidi-Ho. It's very few artists get labeled king, and almost none get labeled that twice. And finally, I'd just like to point out that just today, Nintendo, which has a game called Cuphead, which is based largely on the milieu and culture of Cab Calloway. The game has been out for about 4 years now, but today they announced that they're doing an animated cartoon on Netflix. And so this is where we're coming from. It's not so much about me or Cab Calloway, it's about the city and how we can help with this opportunity to really bring about some economic development and tourism and perhaps training and jobs and all that stuff, leveraging the opportunity that this location presents.
So, interesting things you're talking about there. I know you've been looking at, you said you've been looking at it about a month or so. Do you have any notions? Because one of the challenges we face here is if we place a historic designation on this, then what? How do we come up with a development plan for
Right.
this? How, do you have a vision for what this might be? Is it simply private homes again? Is it a community center? Is it a train, you list a lot of opportunities. Have you any thoughts or preliminary conversations?
Boy, there's so many. We've certainly solicited the interest of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which has recently saved Nina Simone's home as well as John Coltrane's home. I think there's a huge range of opportunity there that would require better minds than mine to really look at. But I'd just like to point out that in South Carolina, at Dizzy Gillespie's home, they demolished the home, they made a park. When you look at it, it doesn't really give him justice for his contribution. I think in Queens, New York, the city and state put together $23 million to create Louis Armstrong's home, which is a center for research as well as a museum. That has about 12,000 visitors a year. And of course, at the top of the thing is Elvis Presley's home, which has 600,000 visitors a year. And this is a potential for Cab Calloway as his role in the invention of rock and roll is becoming a lot more clear. I also, personally, when you think of Cab Calloway and fashion and movies and literature, I would love to see a production studio there. With the technology that we have today, a potential singer could come to that location and get everything done, including the ticket sales for their next gig, if we plan that out, because the technology has compressed this so much. And then it's within the shadow of the avenue, which I think it has a significant role in proving the validity that the avenue was a historic district. And then finally, it's I know it's a difficult conversation to have, but I think you've got a World Heritage Site there, because Cab Calloway made a living singing about drugs. He didn't use drugs himself, but I think if we really put our heads together, we could create a site for truth and reconciliation around the use of drugs, because it's really affected this community a tremendous amount. And we've tried all these approaches that we have currently, and they didn't seem to work. But Cab Calloway's approach at least worked for him. And so ideally, for me, in terms of an epic type of vision, it would be a place where fathers or families would come to bring their children and talk about drugs, because there's the decision that he made to distance himself from it, but then there's the decision that so many others have made to participate in it. And I think this is a point where that question in a child's life can be raised very easily. So those are some of the things. I would love to see it like a Williamsburg, or just a recreation of that pre-World War II era, and something that celebrates the legacy of all of those people. Because as you know, we've lost Chick Webb's home, we've lost Billie Holiday's home, we've lost the Royal Theater, we've lost the UB Blake. And I think authenticity is really important, when you're talking to people from Japan and France and Sweden and stuff like that. And certainly here at home is too. Authenticity is really important. So with that, I'll yield my time, unless there are other questions. Yes.
If not, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I didn't see the information in the cover, so. Those folks, I did see a couple of folks wishing to come up and speak. If you could come up. This is informal, but Chad, if you sort of let us know who you are, it would be a great thing.
Very good. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Presley. I'm Executive Director at True Heights Community Development Corporation. And with me, I have our founder and chair of the Executive Committee, Mrs. Jacqueline Pointer. So I'll speak first, and then I'll ask Ms. Pointer to follow. But as the community center, I don't speak for me. I speak for the thousands of people who live in the community. And about 3 years ago, when the city told us that they were planning to demolish that side of the street, or that part of the block, The community and the city worked together and came up with an idea to build the Druid Square. And to not just give us a big lot, but a beautiful square. And the community's all excited about it, they approved it. We went through 3 years of planning of it with the help of the Department of Planning. And then when the Camp Callaway, well, someone alerted the family, or Peter, about this, and started raising the story and putting it out there. We, the community, then said, well, let's name the square the Camp Callaway Square. So they were willing to change the name to Camp Callaway Square. Now, that house is, like the others on that block, ready to come down. And Peter and I had conversations, Peter's had conversations with a lot of us, and he's agreed with us. I heard the question about, what about using these houses as a facade? He agreed with us that yes, that could be the entry into this beautiful new Camp Callaway Square. So he says that to me, and then he said something different to the media, and then, you know, it makes me look like, or make the community look like the bad guy. We love Camp Callaway's history. But let me just say, there was an agreement to create this facade as a part of the park. And that's where we would like to continue to go. Mrs. Cornish?
Druid Heights, as a community, has been through a lot. Since the riots, the 60s, that community has been fighting to come back. It has fought through more than one riot, as you all know. And each year that the community has watched those homes deteriorate and become a detriment to the residents, the children included, and especially our kids, each year we have asked for help in redeveloping those into homes previously. But we got no help. There were RFPs set out years ago, Larry, that requested that there would be proposals. The city didn't own those properties then, but there were RFPs that were sent out. Druid Heights wanted to partner years ago with various developers. Financing fell through. There were individual owners of those properties. I've been there, and I've been there most of my life. I lived there for 50 years, you know. And, you know, money fell through over and over and over again. Finally, within the last 5 to 6 years, the community has started to really see a change. We've seen it because what we've done is to recollect ourselves as an organization as well as the community, and embraced what we had and worked strong together to go forward on what we had. We decided that we would no longer just seek donations. We decided that we would do this ourselves, and that's what we've been doing. We've been building homes, we've been renovating homes. We have homes that we have 47 units of senior housing down at 607 Pennsylvania Avenue. Coming up, we have homes all along the 19 and 2000 block and the 2200 block of McCullough Street, and the 2100 block of Druid Hill Avenue, right on down to the 1800 block of Druid Hill Avenue, where we have homeowners. On the other side, which faces 2216, and again, I want to emphasize, these properties have been vacant for more than 20 years. That community has been dealing with this for more than 20 years. Why they would be asked to go another 2 years or 3 years when we're set and ready, and I'll tell you what we're doing. But the houses on the opposite side, we already have plans. We received funding from the state to stabilize those houses, and now we're in the process of getting funding to also put 2 units per, because the houses are, by the way, they're over 2,900 square feet, and they are so huge that we could provide spacious apartments because we lack affordable rentals in that area, as well as home ownership. But we're also building home ownership that would be directly behind the square. Not only would families be overlooking the square, but they would also be on the back side of the square as well as on the north side of the square, where there were just recently a whole block of houses on Baker Street that were demolished. The entire block, which Druid Heights will be taking those properties and creating what it has already created in Brunt Street, and that is garage townhouses. We are also currently building single-family homes for low to moderate income families in Baker Street. And those are called the Baker View 1, which we completed already. 17 were sold before we even put a shovel in the ground. And now we're doing phase 2 of Baker's View. There's a lot going on in that community, and it's the community that's doing it. And we absolutely embrace. When we found out that Cab Calloway resided there, we were excited. We invited his family to come and even help to dedicate a pocket park that we have that is now the archway into Druid Heights to celebrate with us, putting up posters and everything. And the community got together and decided, hey, we want to recognize Cab Calloway. I'm a jazz lover. I love, I'm almost older than you know. I'll be 75 soon, my next birthday. But, and so I'm a jazz lover, I love it. So, we embrace that, but we want to recognize and memorize our icons the right way, with the community's interests at heart, not something else. We recognize that. We want to, here's the idea, so I won't hold you up. It was our idea, and I presented it to Mr. Brooks. I said, come to the community and I give you an idea that you can present. We want to preserve the facade of the building, knock down everything else, and make the entrance to the park, create the facade there, take the arches, double entrance, where you have the building itself, and then you take those 3 arches and create entrance. The marble steps would be used throughout the park to recognize other icons that have come through and lived in the community, as well as in Baltimore City. That's the way we wanted to do it. And we would, of course, preserve everything that we could. We have the community involved where they be buying bricks, because they want to do something. They want to be involved in this, as well as selling a large amount of bricks to folks like y'all that might have money, And so that's the plan. That is the plan. There is a plan, and it's been in place for quite a while. And you've got a strong committee. 4th Saturday of every month, 2140 Druid Hill Avenue. McCullough Street. I got Druid Hill in mind. McCullough Street, 2140. We have a beautiful building there. It's the Maggie Quill Druid Heights Community Center, which again, here we go, Druid Heights community did it themselves. 4th Saturday of every month, come to the community meetings, packed out. What time? Packed out with community residents, because they are vested and interested in everything that goes on in their community, and they have a right to say what happens. You can't put a jazz museum or whatever in the middle of a residential block. You wouldn't want to live across the street from it. I know I wouldn't. We were just honored to have Pennsylvania Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue designated as a Black Arts and Entertainment. Yay! That's where we want to put our entertainment. That's where we want people to take their kids to learn more about our heritage. On Pennsylvania Avenue, where a lot of it went on. Yes, we lost some buildings, but they have been recognized. Upton is here. They've done that beautiful edifice down there for the what's the name of the club? I forgot about it. But yeah, they've done that. Let the community have a say in what's going on. We want no more than you do. No more than you do. That's it.
Right. And if I may ask, one of the persons or our partners really have been Ms. Kimberly Knox and Mr. Chad Hayes. If we could yield a moment of our time to them to speak on how they've been engaged with our community for 3 years and how the residents are excited about this new square, that they're willing to change the name for it. I just wish they would come up and share a little bit of what they have. You heard from Mrs. Cornish. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
One question. It's interesting. I knew nothing about this facade thing, just driving around
Right.
looking at it, it makes sense to me, so I'm glad to hear that someone else, is that still something?
Absolutely, that's what we want to
That's what
do.
we are.
We want to
I
create
didn't
that.
know that.
Yes, sir.
We want to
Good
do the
minds.
facade.
Good minds think alike.
Yes, we want to do the facade, we want to utilize because, as a matter of fact, we already have a request in
For the
to the
bricks.
city to preserve the bricks and to save the marble steps. And we're trying to find a location where they can be, because you asked the question about how the bottoms come out. Well, what happens is we have general contractors that parade or go around through the community and they steal them. Those steps are valuable, and when they're building homes out in the county and other places, even downtown, they're about $1,000 a piece for those steps. So one marble step is worth about $1,000 a piece.
So
They're
we're working
solid
to wear
marble.
these steps to hold them.
Other questions, commissioners? If not, maybe we can, one or two more quick comments, and then we are
Thank you,
behind starting
thank
the
you.
meeting here, but that's good, but,
So my name's Chad Hayes, I'm the Western District Planner with the Department of Planning. I only have two things to say. The first is, we've been working with the community since 2016 to decide what to do with this block. So this has been a community-led plan. The second thing I will say is, don't just look at this block in a silo, you have to see what's behind it. Nobody's talking about the 2200 block of Edding, or the 2200 block of Division, or the 500 block of Baker, or the 500 block of Gold Street. That entire square block, you have 3 occupied buildings in a square block. So you can't look at the 2200 block of Druid Hill Avenue in a silo, you have to look at the entire square block.
But, can't you look at that as the eastern wall of a solid block, a facade, side facade? That would not disrupt.
2216, it stands, would be a tremendous gateway into the park. If you keep the entire block standing, you've created a wall that keeps eyes off of a block, and who knows what happens behind those walls when it's dark. We've seen interblock parks fail time and time again because they're closed off. We have seen interblock parks fail time and time again because they are closed off to the street. When you close off a park, you privatize it, and sometimes bad things happen. So I agree that keeping 2216 standing would be a tremendous entrance into the park, but I think if you look at preserving the entire block, you're closing it off, bad things are gonna happen.
Or something in between.
Well, I will say that we are gonna do what the community wants us to do. We're following their lead, and so if the community decides that they would like to keep the entire block up, that's certainly something we can consider, but 2216, I think, keeping that up, that's a historical building. I think that makes a tremendous entrance.
what funds have been allocated at this point to sort of go beyond planning to actually executing the park?
I'll let our green coordinator discuss that. Kim
Lovely
Knox.
segue.
I know that, as both Chad has said, and the founder of Druid Heights CDC and former executive director Jacqueline Cornish, as well as, of course, the executive director of Anthony Presley of Druid Heights, noted that we have been working in terms of planning for the last 2 years, but they have been working much longer because this is a community-led project. And that's one of the things about the planning department and the Baltimore Green Network, is that it is a community-driven project. As you probably saw, there is a playground that Druid Heights CDC did in partnership with Kaboom and CarMax that I see in use on Sundays every hour of the day. You'll see people sitting in the amphitheater enjoying a book. And because it was a community-created park, and so when we worked on the Baltimore Green Network, being honest, we went to the projects that had the strongest community support, that had the community vision, and of course, that was the Callaway Square. So, yes, we do have funding for, between GO, for construction for this year, for money from this year and next year. We have, the planning department has already, have the funds in terms of, we worked with the decision of the community to choose the designer, which is Design Collective, chosen by the panel of community members. And then for the final for the concept design. And then we also are working with the community in terms of the site survey, all the pre-construction, which we have had the funding for, which we do have the funding for. So we have the funding for the project. Thank you so much. And
Fine.
Sorry, Queen Knox, planning coordinator for the Baltimore Green Network, the Baltimore City Planning Department.
Questions from Ms. Knight? Seeing none, is anyone else here in the audience who'd like to share some additional information on this? If not,
What's the timeline on this? Are you all getting started in 6 months with this? Is the funding is all
The funding is, the funding is secured for the pre-construction, and half the money is in for this year, fiscal 20. And for the construction, the other half for the construction is fiscal 21. So we need to do the construction, the site designs, the permitting. That's all, that funding's all there. And by the time, that usually takes 4 to 6 months, and we'll be looking with HCD and consolidation of the lots. That takes some time. And then you can start doing the building at that point. But obviously what we're looking at is doing the building into the vision of the community, and that's what we're working on at this point. So we do have the funding, it is in terms of the budget.
If I may
So
redirect.
6 months is what the timeline is.
We're working on it now.
Okay.
It's ongoing. We have a meeting actually at the end of this month, July the 27th.
Completion would be at least
At least we did, yes. The construction will start after the design has been finalized by the community.
all right.
May I redirect?
Questions, as in 1 second, third, see if anyone else here wants to kind of address the commission on this. This is all just an open conversation right now. It's nothing formal is really happening today. But I appreciate, first of all, Ms. Knight for coming out and giving us these variety of perspectives. Mr. Brooks, I'll give you a minute or two.
Sure.
If you want to chat.
Absolutely no objection to, I mean, it belongs to the community and that kind of thing. You have to understand my perspective. I know that my grandfather was a global phenomenon. I submitted to the director 912 signatures, which we got in a week to ask the city to consider saving the home. And so I think there's an obligation in generations and thinking about the global impact that he had and how that can benefit the area economically. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to gavel out for 2 minutes just so we can get set up. I can start the recording equipment. Ready for our formal session. Stick around. We got more to cover. Thank you all.
It's really, really early.